So we've got 50 minutes to do our workshop. We're going to try and finish on time. Apologies that we're running a little bit over, but we're going to jump right in. So hopefully this guy works. So I'm going to be the chair of the session. I'm also just going to do a little intro on climate change, climate resilience. We've heard a lot about that today, so hopefully I can fly through that. Ahsoka is going to talk to us a little bit about incidents and emergencies, what they mean, and then we're going to have two case studies, one from Italy and then one from Brazil. Okay, so that's the order of the day. I'll introduce the speakers when they come up, but let me jump in quickly. Okay, so what are the impact of climate change on water supplies? Obviously, it could mean that you don't have enough water, or you've got too much water, or you can't actually supply the water to people because your infrastructure is damaged or destroyed. You're not able to do O&M, operations and maintenance. And the challenge with all of this, we saw Dr. Daniel Buss provided some examples from South America, from Latin America and the Caribbean. It happens here where we are. It happens in Asia, some examples here. It happens in Africa. This was last year in KwaZulu-Natal province in South Africa, where there were significant floods and the typical water quality issues, water safety issues that we hear about now. There we've got the MEC, the minister basically warns public against using river water because now they're looking for an alternative supply. We've got, you can see, exposed pipelines. Clean water is now the biggest challenge in KwaZulu-Natal. People they've broken the pipe basically to get water because they can't get water. And also the floods, were largely around people were living in slum areas, and they built slums in the areas which are in the floodplains. The reason why people haven't built houses there is because it's in the floodplain. Slum dwellers don't know that and build there, and then we have these issues with people getting displaced. So we need to ask ourselves, are we resilient? And resilience is all about being able to bounce back, following a disaster, following something going wrong. So we ask ourselves, what should we do? How do we manage this? And we've heard some of our keynote speakers here telling us it's not easy, it's not predictable. You have to be flexible, like Elvis Presley's hips. Are we awake? No? Okay. Anyway, so how can we use water safety plans to manage climate-related risks and supplies? We all know, we've seen this diagram before, water safety plans help us manage from catchment all the way through to consumer, so we need to manage those risks along the line. And as we've mentioned before, now we've got all of these other things that also play up: fires, floods, drought. All of these things can wreak havoc. So what we need to do is we need to look at the impact on the existing hazards and hazardous events. We need to consider if there's any new risks that could come into play which we haven't thought about before. We need to make sure that our emergency systems are now more up to date and aware. Are we running drills? What happens if? We must do those kind of scenarios and develop any programs that can support these initiatives. So how do we augment our existing water safety planning team? You need to get hold of some experts, get them in, but they don't have to form a permanent part of the team. So get their advice, but then make sure you've still got your core water safety plan team, because we don't want the situation where you've got too many groups or too big a group, and then it becomes unwieldy and you get nowhere. Also, if you've got a system diagram and you know your system description, now you need to consider what happens if there's a difference within the actual system. How is it impacted, and am I aware of it? Can I make those changes? Now, many people ask, where can we get climate information from? You've seen many examples being presented here. The first thing to do, the easiest thing to do, is to talk to people. So working with stakeholders, expert groups to understand. You can also access existing climate reports, so you don't have to do any work. Experts have done this for you already. You can also use existing web-based portals, or then you can go and collect your own data. Obviously, in terms of increasing cost, collecting your own data, analyzing your own data will be a lot more costly. So this is an example from Australia. This is the Weather Bureau, or the Bureau of Meteorology, and you can go and find a whole heap of information, obviously just for Australia, but they provide very useful guidance for the water utilities. In South Africa, something similar, it's called the Green Book, where you can go and also access all of this information. So experts have processed the data and give you an idea as to what the trends might be. Remember, there's always uncertainty. This is an example from Bangladesh, where they don't have a fancy portal, but they've got a series of websites where you can go to and then get an idea of what the climate impacts might be for your region. So here's an example from Nepal for a particular municipality and a town within that municipality, and now they've gone and made a climate summary. So most places should be able to do a climate summary. Some places still struggle with, so how do I use that information? Just to note, Bettina told us around things like sanitary inspection forms that are available. They help guide us as to what the issues might be if there was climate impacts. There's also other checklists available. So within the WHO guidelines, there's a checklist in the appendix of this document. And then this is another document that Bettina was also involved with. It's some hazards and hazardous events, in particular related to climate impacts. And these are some of the new control measures that you might need to consider also. Because now remember, you always need to ask yourself the question, what if this happens? So it might mean that you need to elevate, for example, your reservoir. You might need to cover your reservoirs more. Maybe they're open. You know, now we're talking about cyanobacteria, blue-green algae blooms are more frequent. So there's all little strategies that you might need to do and take that into account in your existing control measures or new control measures. You might also need to create more specific SOPs, standard operating procedures, work instructions, whatever you want to call them. You might need to have more plans in place, flood management plan, drought plan. So you can see now we need to think about, are people able to cope with an emergency situation that might arise? So we need to ask ourselves all of these questions, make sure that we have improved preparedness, planning, and recovery, the ability to bounce back. I went to a training workshop in Bangladesh and Nepal in 2020, and these are some of the key insights that they shared with me whilst I was there. So number one is not only identifying climate-based risks, but also non-climate related risks, because we're not perfect at what we do yet, so we need to make sure we're addressing both of them. A map with GPS locations, so they were able to draw maps like this, but maps like that one up there. They were able to draw those, but they didn't often have GPS coordinates. Now, you know, when it comes to things like climate change, and if, for example, the river course changes, it was even more important to understand where all of our assets are. And then they also noted that many of the existing control measures might not be effective. So it's almost like they need to go back to the drawing board and think about what do we need to put in place here to help us. All right, so what does the future hold? We all know it's not a one-time event. It's happening frequently to everybody. So, you know, we need to make sure that we are aware and we're prepared. We know that resourcing is a challenge. It's not going to change. That's life. So we need to be aware of that and make sure we adapt properly. We need to make sure that when we're planning new projects, we are thinking about climate resilience. You know, a lot of people are still not thinking about it. You know, are you taking 5 minutes to think about it at least? We also need to make sure that there's ongoing training and awareness, workshops, conferences like this also help. We need to audit to make sure, keep ourselves honest, and we need, again, that top management buy-in and ownership. So the key thing is, like, be a chameleon, you know, be able to adapt to your environment, be aware of what the climate threats are for your particular area, and then ask yourself that question, how can this actually impact on my supply system, on the infrastructure, on the water quality, on the water quantity, on my people. I presented earlier today on an example in Wittenberg municipality where the people were put under the most stress in an emergency situation. We all know that things can change overnight, so you must ask yourself, am I able to adapt? Am I resilient enough? And you need to go out to site. So I think some of the people in the conference, you might be at a technical level where you are out on site all the time, and some of us might be in a management level where we go out to site maybe once a year or maybe every 5 years. Every 5 years? No, nobody? At least once a year? Okay. You need to go out to site. Get all the management in a van and off you go to site. Go and show them all of your problems. I once was at a municipality where we were talking to them about water quality. And during the tea break, the finance, that's why I talk, you must always have a finance guy. So it's good to see the bank here. The CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, came talk to me, and he said, he didn't know that chlorine is that important. These technical guys are always giving him a requisition, slip for more chlorine. And he said, those guys must be wasting it, so I'm going to delay it by 2 weeks. He didn't know that chlorine was a disinfectant. He just thought that the operators were wasting the chlorine, and so he slowed down the order so that they can use it sparingly. Okay, so we need to educate everybody from top to bottom. You're going to have your local water safety planning team, and then you need to kind of like seek ad hoc support from, for example, climate-related experts. And then it's very important, it's not going to be perfect from the start. So, use your available basic information, just get started, and then you can incrementally improve. Now, in the interest of time, we had a lot of exercises. I'm going to talk to Alejandro, maybe we can find some time tomorrow or something to run through some of these exercises. Maybe it'll be fun for us to do. But in the interest of time, and I think everybody's had a long day, we're going to skip the exercises tonight with your permission, yes? Okay. All right, so then I'm going to call on Ahsoka. Ahsoka, will you take us through what's an incident and what's an emergency? Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Yes, it's a long day, so I'm going to fly through some of my slides. I'm not going to go through everything. It's getting late, isn't it? I'm going to change the gear a little bit. We heard about, what we need to do for climate change, predict. Can we predict, can we not predict? But what do we do tomorrow? If something happens tomorrow, especially for the water agencies, government, regulators, do you know what you do? Are you prepared? So I'm going to change the gear slightly to today and tomorrow, right? We need to be prepared now. So I'm going to skip that. So I'm going to talk about emergency and incident. How many of you know the difference between the two? I need to do that if you know. Difference between the term incident and emergency. One, yesterday, except 3 people, everybody else said we know, at some level, we are aware of water safety plans. So it's a bit of a concern to me now. Right? How do we respond to an incident and emergency? Because so I'm going to link this to the water safety plan. In the end, water safety plan is the best way to manage risk to water quality. It's recommended by WHO. That's why most of you implement water safety plans. In the manual, there's a definition, right? I'm not going to read the whole thing. Basically, it says it's an abnormal event, right? But it can be it can create basically problem to water supply system and have a potential to escalate to an emergency. It basically says emergency is bigger, incident smaller. So that's the definition, very simple definition in the WSP manual. But this is what we use in Australia. So this is in the state of Victoria. There's a statewide emergency response plan. We all follow it, not just the water authorities, police, state emergency services, the fire rescue Victoria, because we have a lot of fires, right? We all talk the same language. Incident means what's in here, right? It says basically it's something that can be managed by a small team with a leader, right? You don't need the entire lot of other resources. Then that's what this says, right? And this is published. You can Google this. It's a public document, very detailed, right? Has a set of conclusions, clear start date, finish date, and it is under the control of individual. Now, it doesn't mean that one person is doing everything, but there is a person called incident controller. He can decide what to do. He has a lot of authority, right? And it says it's not an emergency. So what's an emergency? A serious situation that occurs for which there is no standard operating procedure. Incidents can be managed within standard operating procedures. Emergencies, every emergency, even though every incident is different, you can manage it within your standard protocols. But emergency is much bigger than that. And a lot of things we talked about during the last 2 days and today about the emergencies are big emergencies that cannot be resolved by just standard operating procedures alone. And they happen unexpectedly, can happen very quickly. I'll show you some examples and maybe test you. You all tried, so I'm going to test your sort of thinking power by asking some questions. Again, we have a very clear definition. It says what an emergency is. It's managed under the whole Victorian state emergency management scheme. For example, there are examples, earthquakes, wildfires, and bushfires, storms, etc. All right. Here's an example. I want you to understand what I've written there. Everybody understands E. coli, I believe, in this room. If you get so we, as water authorities, we take a lot of samples. One sample in our routine program, I've taken it today, get the results tomorrow, I get an E. coli. Right. Is it an incident or emergency? All right. How many of you think it is an incident? I want you to raise your hands. Maybe get up and stretch and raise your hands. How many of you think it is an incident? Good, you're thinking. Oh, great. All right. Yeah. It is something that can be now again, this depends on how prepared you are. If you have a very good water safety plan in place, this is a piece of cake, right? I shouldn't say that because every E. coli is not a good result. But how to manage it, it's not a problem. So it can be managed by a small team, and that's what we do, right? So this is, the pictures are from our sampling program, someone taking a sample, and you got an E. coli, right? And we take 134 samples. So one sample not necessarily mean confirmed contamination. So it can be managed. Until it's proven, it can be managed. Okay, a big storm. I talked about storms, floods, droughts. This is a big storm that basically taken the power off a treatment plant. And that treatment plant supplies majority of Melbourne, right? It's about 100,000 people. And we only have one barrier in our water safety plan, or in our processes to contamination, which is chlorination. There's no filtration. It's gone. And the backup fire fails. Is it an emergency or incident? How many of you think it is an emergency? Oh, pretty good. You are in my emergency management, emergency team. Yes, this is a big it is we didn't expect 100,000 people to be without power. Did we panic? Potential for contamination. Even though the water comes from protected catchments, we can't guarantee the water is safe. So here's a real-life example, right? It did happen in 2020. We issued a precautionary precautionary boil water notice. No one got sick, not a single E. coli detection when we tested that water. This is, you can Google it, you'll get all the information, but the chlorinator was off only for 3 hours. But we can't guarantee the water is safe. Better to be safe than sorry. So we issued a boil water notice, which was a massive effort, right? With 4 water authorities working together with the Department of Health, media, communications. There's a lot to do. All right, we call it bushfires. What do you call it here? I don't know. Wildfires in the United States and other countries, but it's basically a catchment caught fire. You can see literally the catchment did catch fire. Again, no filtration, chlorination only, right? Oops, I'm going the other way. All right, is it an emergency or who thinks it's an incident? It can be tricky. It can be actually incident emergency because it's of its sheer scale. It was treated as emergency because we had to deal with not one. So one incident controller was not able to manage it. We had incident controllers at Yarra Valley Water, the other water authorities, but also the police, the fire department, Fire Rescue Victoria is our fire department, state emergency services, right? Health department involved. So each one followed the same principles. Each of those organizations had one incident controller talking to each other, talking the same language. So so it was an emergency, sorry. So I'll probably stop there because of the time. What would you do? Especially, I don't know how many from here, from the water agencies and the government, would you panic? How many of you would panic? Big deal, this thing happened. One, at least, yeah, that's one of, yeah. Majority don't panic. Maybe they all already going to sleep. I don't know. Yeah, but you shouldn't panic. You will panic if you actually don't have a process in place, right? Massive framework behind it. So I'll quickly show you. No, we don't panic. Now, what to do is actually there's some guidance in the second edition of the Water Safety Plan Manual, how to deal with, right? But I'll show you practical examples. How do we do it? There's a very clear framework. This is a statewide framework, right? It's state emergency management plans. Then we have 4 water utilities in Melbourne. We each have our metropolitan water industry, and then each water company has our own one. So what you see on the right-hand side is the framework in one of our documents, right? And this is accessible to all Yarra Valley Water employees. All 700 employees can access these documents anytime, any day. I can access it from here if I need to, through my intranet, right, through the intranet. So it's very clearly detailed what to do and also the structure. Now, there was a presentation this afternoon from, I think, Uruguay water supply, how you dealt with the drought. I saw snippets of this. There was an operational team. Now, every water authority, every other agency follow the same structure. If it is whether it's the water authority or the fire authority or the police, they follow exactly the same structure, right? Crisis management team, incident controller. He has the full authority to make decisions. Nobody, chief executive, the board, no. Literally, if they walk into the room, the incident control can say, please, can you please stay there? We don't do that, but that's the power. And everyone agrees to that process. And then, so then for each area, planning, logistics, includes food, right? Someone has to order food for the incident team, right? How much need to get things, arrange vehicles, arrange this, someone needs to run around. So that's what the logistic team does. So similarly, there are operations, public information, intelligence. Because when you're in an incident, you don't have time to think, but there is a team called intelligence. I typically end up in this subject matter expert in planning or in here, but I'm not part of the day-to-day roster. Money, finance, there's someone from finance. So this is not happening on the run. This has been developed, practiced, tested in, we get a lot of incidents and emergencies, right? So water safety plan helps you to have a process in place to manage incidents and emergencies in a very structured way. I don't expect you to read anything in there. This is a screenshot of our intranet, and every blue line is clickable. You can click, the document pops up, right? And we have several layers of emergency response plans. There's one specific for emergency response plan for drinking water quality. That's nothing else, it's drinking water quality, right? So, and then respective, I guess, responsible people will know what's in there, how to use it. And they are very detailed documents, 30, 40 pages, some documents. And that's a screenshot of the front page of the emergency response plan for water quality. They are controlled documents. They are updated regularly. They don't sit in a shelf, and we don't go and update this every 6 months, 12 months. And every update is trackable. We know exactly who touched this document in the system and updated. So important thing is, the message is, do you have an emergency response plan? Do you regularly update it? Role plays, do you practice what's in there? Is it going to work? In our case, we didn't really need to practice role plays because we get a lot of incidents. One E. coli, we get about 2 or 3 positives every year. We don't need to do a role play, we do the real thing. And then teams, we have a roster every week. Every week we change the roster. They are available after hours, anytime. They can be called at 2 a.m. in the morning, and they are available, right? And then subject matter experts, of course, are important. Communication is one of the most difficult things during an incident. Not everybody goes and talks to the media. There's one person on behalf of Yarra Valley Water or our managing director, the spokesperson, because miscommunication is the worst thing you can do in an incident. This happened just 2 days ago. I just wanted to show how prepared, how prepared we are as a water authority. And this notice came through in my email because I am in the email, the incident email circulation list. And this literally happened on the 2nd of September, a few days ago, right? And what it said was the treatment plant is currently without power. That's not a good sign, isn't it? We only have chlorination. That's the same treatment plant. But the good thing is running on a backup generator. High priority request has been submitted to restoration. This is to the power authority. There's emergency dosing units located Silvan. So we actually have, redundancies, right? So you have another backup chlorinator. If that failed, we've actually got another one downstream. So this is something we did, taking into consideration the learnings from the previous incidents. And this is why you need to go back and review your risk assessment after every incident. Now, when I go back, when we meet next time, we meet regularly, rolling review. This will be discussed and risk will be reassessed. So these are all practical things. And our wholesaler will have operators present on site for the duration. Why do you think, what does this mean? So a lot of them are not manned these days. You can run remotely, right? But you should be able to get to the sites and do something very quickly. So that's probably hopefully gave you some practical insights to what should you do when something goes wrong. Thank you.
Next speaker is going to be Dr. Enrico Vaschetti. Enrico has a PhD in applied biochemistry and chemistry and an MSc degree in analytical chemistry. He's currently a senior researcher at the Italian National Institute of Health, the ISS, and the director of the functional area chemical risk of the ISS National Center of Water Safety. Enrico, over to you. That's yours.
Thank you very much for introducing me. It's a pleasure for me to give some insight about our experience about a survey we have made in Italy just to understand what the water suppliers think about the climate variability effects on the system. This study was carried out in 2022. The aims were determining the effects of climatic variation on Italian drinking water supply systems, and also to understand if we need for climate-related funding and policies. The organizer was the University of Brescia in the northern part of Italy, northwest of Italy. Together with my institute, the university is actually coordinating the National Working Group on Safe Drinking Water Supply and Climate Change. Before presenting and introducing you the results of this survey, I would like to spend just a few words about the effect of the anomalies of the weather in my country. I've just prepared two slides about this subject. Of course, there are a lot of different graphs that I could show you, but we have no time. On the left, you can see anomalies about the temperature. You can see the blue line that represents the global increase of the temperature in the world, and the red line is the same behavior about the temperature in Italy. As you can see in the last part of the graph, we can see a sort of variability, but also an increase in the temperature greater than in the global situation. And on the right, you can see the mean temperature anomalies in the 2021. You can see the red part of the map that represents the anomalies of from 0.5 to 1.5 degrees, and it involves most part of the country, not only the southern part, which is well known to be suffering about the anomalies due to the presence of the Africa and also the anomalies that are carried out in this part of the world. In the second slide, you can see the rainfall anomalies in Italy. On the left, you can see in particular anomalies in the cumulative precipitation. You can see a variability and so an alternative between flooding and droughting, and so this is the main situation. But the most important thing are related to the consecutive dry days in 2022. And you can see up to 80 days of dry days in most part of Italy, in particular in Sardinia, Sicily, but also along the Tyrrhenian coast, which is quite anomalous for the situation, the normal situation in Italy. Now we can see the results of this survey. This survey involved 40 water utilities. Most of them were in the northern part of Italy, but also other water utilities represent the other part of the Italian boots, as we call. The questionnaire was structured in 3 different sections. One is related to the general information. The second one is related to the climate change impacts on the water supply systems. And the third one is related to the control measures that, that have been undertaken to mitigate the effects by the water suppliers. We start with the general overview. You can see the number of inhabitants served by the 40 water supplies that were interviewed, and most of them are very small water suppliers, but in other cases we have a great number of inhabitants that are served. Overall, if we sum up all the inhabitants that were involved by these water supplies, they represent 1/3 of the national population that are served by this water. And this is a general overview about the number of water treatment plants operated by every supplier. Most of them are less than 10 water treatment plants, but there are also other greater than the others. In this slide, we can see the composition of the water sources. In Italy, 85% of the water sources are groundwater. So we have very quality water because it's quite protected, except for the presence in some cases of arsenic, which is present in some part of Italy, and the origin is related to the presence of volcanoes in our peninsula. But now it's treated, so it's not a problem. And you can see about this survey, most of them, of course, are involved in the abstraction of groundwater and in general as a spring. And we have part of them who use the river, lake, and artificial dam. Then we have also interconnected networks and external supply. We have asked to the water supplier if they have experimented some effects about the interconnection with the climate variability. And most of them, 82%, answer yes. We have had some problem. And which are the observed phenomena related to this answer? Most of them have answered highlighting an increase in drought periods. Most of them, 80%, so this is the main problem. Also the presence, or the problem related to the increase of temperature, an increase in rainfall intensity, and also the opposite, the increase in flooding. So these are the main problems they have experimented. If we examine the observed impact per water body, you can see this diagram. In particular, we can see a huge effect due to the decrease in the water level, in particular for the groundwater. It's quite interesting, this answer, but also for all other kind of water sources. We have also obtained, as an answer, an increase in microbial contamination, increase in chemical contamination, and for the surface water, an increase in algal contamination, because some species are moving from the Africa to the Italy. We are in contact with the Africa. And when we ask for the water treatment scheme, most of them apply this scheme, which is composed by abstraction, treatment, distribution. And about the treatment, we can see pre-oxidation, coagulation, flocculation, granular filtration, the treatment with GAC, and the disinfection, the final disinfection. And of course, we ask for the effect of this climate variability on every part of this scheme. We start with the impact on the pre-oxidation. The most important thing is the increase in oxidant demand, but also, of course, an increase in disinfection byproducts. There are also other effects, minor effects. About the impacts on the coagulation flocculation, we can see an increase in incoming water turbidity, which is also related to an increase in coagulant and flocculant demands, and there are also other effects, minor effects. Then about the granular filtration, they also highlighted the problem of an increase in incoming water turbidity, which is also related to the decrease in filtration speed. And about the impacts on GAC filtration, we can see an increase in suspended solid load at water inlet, and an increase in dissolved pollutants load at the GAC filter inlet, and in decrease in the empty bed contact time. This is due to the GAC saturation, poor clogs, and increased flow rates. Then we have impacts on the disinfection. Generally, they highlighted an increase in microbial contamination that is overcome by increasing the disinfectant demand. But this is related also to the increase of the disinfection byproducts. And we can see the impact on water distribution. In particular, the most important problem was the temperature increase. And about this temperature increase, we have also noticed the problem of Legionella in some parts of the network. Particularly in private buildings where we don't have a specific system in place to prevent this problem. And also it is correlated to a lot of different problems like biofilm growth, pipe biocorrosion, increase in disinfection byproducts, changes in chemical and microbial qualities, and increase, of course, in disinfectant consumption. So all of them are related to the increase of the temperature inside the pipelines. And you have to take into account that some part of Italy has very high temperature during the summer, in particular in the southern part of Italy. We could reach also 40 degrees in Sicily. And we also have asked about the non-compliance episodes, and some of them, 43%, think that these episodes are related to climate variability. And then we ask which kind of control measure have you adopted to contrast these problems. Most of them are increasing the monitoring of the chemical microbial composition in the distributed network and also in the treatment system. Some of them are still studying the problem, but some of them have also implemented a new management procedure, and in particular they have applied the water safety plan. And 27% are using new technologies. That means a new collection system, membrane filters, and other devices. Finally, we can see an overview of what we have seen in the previous slides. In particular, the representativeness of the survey. We have representative from the northern part of Italy, but also from other parts of Italy. 33 water suppliers out of 40 have experimented critical impacts on their own water system. The impacting phenomena are related to drought periods, rainfall intensity, temperature, and flood increase. We have effect on the water source, like the reduction of water level, macrobiological chemical quality, and algae growth. The effect observed on the treatment plants are the increase of chemical in pre-oxidation, coagulation, flocculation, and post-disinfection, the clogging of sand and GAC filter, and an increase in disinfection byproducts. The control measures are, we are studying the problem, but also a risk analysis based on the water safety plan and some technological innovation. Of course, this requires some specific funding and specific policies just to afford this problem. And we would like, at the national level, incorporate water sanitation affected by climate variability in the national adaptation plans and nationally determining contribution. That's all. Thank you.
Final speaker is Alexandre Bueno from Brazil. He has a bachelor's degree in production engineering and administration with a focus on systems analysis. He's a specialist in public management and has a master's degree in aquaculture and fisheries from the Institute of Fisheries of the state of São Paulo. Currently, he is the manager of the Water Resource Department of the Water Production Business Unit, and since 1998, he has been involved in the development, research, and control of conventional processes in the sanitation sector, automation of water plumbing systems, reservoir management, and environmental management in water production systems in the metropolitan region of São Paulo. As the manager of the Water Resources Department, he oversees the qualitative and quantitative management of supply sources and ensures compliance with the National Water Resources Plan for Zapes's dams. Alexandre, over to you.
Hola, muchas gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, anyone. Well, idade, né? Vou ter que pegar minha cola. Well, I am here present on managing and resilience lessons for water crisis of the 2014 and 15 and 2021. Well, what's the challenge? These slides are most region metropolitan of São Paulo. Né? This is any characteristic and the region. There's two different types reservoirs scenarios. Protects reservoirs and urban reservoirs. What are availability in the metropolitan region, São Paulo? Draw attention to the fact and the metropolitan region is located in the most central and drainage basin. The severe water crisis in 2014. Here, I will show you SPI, the Standard Precipitation Index, to illustrate the 2014 crisis. The blue line represents the data of the standard deviations of the range mountain precipitation, while the red data indicate a magnitude of the surrounding mountains. Note that we experience an area 24 months without precipitation events, researching the historical average. Okay, I'm here. That's a look that happened in the largest reservoir in Canterbury system. We had a technical resource when the water level dropped below intake point. The technical reserve. Well, solutions. Investments carried out. Important information about of investment made. Storage capacity. Transfer of the raw water between reservoirs. Treatment capacity at station. And transfer of the treated water between two systems. The solution, metropolitan integrated system. The volume capacity, 1.94 billion cubic meters. And integrated system. More investment with the telemetric station. We receive that field data with allows of the monitoring global or specific system specific manner. Integrating in the system with the macro view of the condensations. This is data. With your sign, the decision support system. Well, this is a decision support system that help us decide with the reservoir we should draw water. This is help us decision making. More pictures, the system. Well, water treatment station. In Sabesp, we are a Garaui station treatment. The production capacity 33 cubic meters per second. The treatment plants and the Sabesp are working towards adaptation industry 44.0 and some of them already have implementation and operation. And here, this slide, here are some characteristics of our production system, including the capacities and treatment plant, and they are just the next picture, metropolitan region water supply system, where the system can advance and integrate. No, okay. Integrate the system. Okay. Operations control center. All of this process is managed by the OCC. The team performs operation such as SCADA system in real time for the entire metropolitan region. Take a look at more illustration. SCADA system. Well, practical results. With a decision support system, one of the first practical results we observed was that with decision support system, we are able to determine with a reservoir to use more for production. And sorry, we didn't draw more or than necessary or left overflow. An example of this control system from last year. More information, more economic of resource, of its law, of raw water. Another result we can show with the investment and decision support system is that the SPI event that occurred during the Fiscal War crisis in 2014 also happened in 2021. This is 2014. This is 2041. With a great intensity, but without an impact on the water supply. And finally, an overview of the water supply management after the investments made by the company shows that there is no impact on the population. This is the crisis. This is investment. With investment, without investment, this is a level of capacity. No impact over population. Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it's late in the day. I think we're all tired. I think we all want to go and rest a little bit before the gala dinner. But I'm going to allow, maybe not for Ahsoka and myself, but we've answered enough questions. But perhaps for our other two case study speakers, do we have one or two questions for them? Anybody? There's a hand over there. Do we still have a roving mic, or do you want to use mine?
Thanks. I have a question to Asoka. Thanks for your presentation. It was very informative. I was wondering, what is your opinion about extreme storm events impacting wastewater treatment plants? So do you think municipalities are worried of sludge blanket overflow events or blower capacity being insufficient due to shock loading?
Sure, thanks for that question. I think it's a good question because I didn't even talk about wastewater side, and I've sort of focused on the drinking water, but we have pretty much, you have to put equal, if not more, emphasis on the wastewater side, because you do get a lot of sewer spills, for example. There are emergency relief structures, but yeah, it's a big challenge, and then you end up polluting in the case of Melbourne, the Bay. I think it is important to have very similar approach to all your products, whether it's drinking water, wastewater, recycled water. When it comes to emergencies and incidents, you need pretty much the same process. The examples I showed you in that screenshot with all the documents, that was the drinking water side, but there's other documents and processes in place. So they're very important. Because the EPA, for example, we report every incident to the EPA. So if you don't have that structure, it's going to pollute the environment, much more visible than a drinking water incident sometimes.
Thank you.